It looks like our attendee entrance is stabilizing. There'll probably be some more who join in here in the next couple of minutes, but I think it's worth getting started as on time as possible. So I would like to welcome everyone to this webinar on Infrahub and Netpicker, the topic being bringing production validation into network CI and CD. Our speakers today are Jordan Villarreal. Hopefully I actually said that right, Jordan. I haven't said your last name before, I realize.
That's all right.
Developer advocate for OpsMill and Otto Coster, lead developer for Netpicker. And I wanted to point out that Otto has the same name as the OpsMill mascot. So this is very auspicious. And
Yeah, I heard that indeed in Autocom, yeah.
And I also want to point out that we both have sort of animal sort of style kind of elements in our branding, which also means that there's a high degree of compatibility, even just out of the gate. So it's all in good spirits. So I will just point out a couple of things that if you've been on a Zoom webinar before, that will be very obvious to you, but just so that typically, at the side or the bottom of your panel as a viewer, you'll have there's a place for Q&A, and if you click on that, you can put in questions, or that's a good place to interact. You want to make comments or let us know about anything. That's a great place to interact, and we very much welcome you to put questions in flow as much as possible. We're going to try to pick any of those up as we go, and just make this as interactive as possible. So we absolutely invite you to do that, and really appreciate everybody's time here today. So I think with that, we are ready to go. And so Jordan, I'm going to hand it off to you to get us started, and then we'll go from there. Thanks everyone for attending.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. You've met myself and Otto. We also have Pete Crocker on the OpsMill side, who will help out with some questions down the line if we run into those. So we're talking about bringing production validation into network CI/CD today. So when we talk about CI and how it's used in network automation, there's groups that have been using CI/CD for quite some time. I mean, it's a known topic within the programming world, but when we start getting into network automation, sometimes there's there's a lack of clarity around, well, how does CI fit into our teams? Like, how does it fit into our workflows? And where do those tools live? And what does that tooling do? And sometimes you may ask if there's a webinar out there that can help you learn some of those things. So that's what we're going to be doing today with an introduction to Infrahub from OpsMill. Then we'll also be looking at Netpicker, and two use cases where their product is used to bring that CI world into the network automation landscape, and how you can leverage both platforms for that. So we're going to start with a short intro on Infrahub. Then we'll turn it over to Otto, let him give his intro on Netpicker, and then we'll hit the two use cases inside of there, and we'll leave some room, try to leave some room for some Q&A at the end. But obviously, as Alex said, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to drop those in chat. So what is Infrahub? And this is just a quick screenshot of our modern UI here. It's a next generation, fully impartial source of truth. And I thought long and hard about using fully impartial in here and what that means. And when you're looking for a source of truth, you want it to be vendor neutral. You don't want to be tied down to any specific vendor's opinion, any specific developer's opinion for other tools. And you want it to work within any framework that you're using for your network automation or for your IT automation. So how do we go about being vendor neutral and developer independent? We allow you to control your schema and your data models. And what that really means is your business data, what it is that your team does, can fit into the model as a first-party citizen. It's not an extension of a model. It's not a custom field. It's not a plugin. It's something that's built into that schema, to those data definitions, because you are in control of them as a user of Infrahub. As part of the journey into network automation, you will eventually need something like Git for creating branches of the data, whether that's you're bringing up a new site, you're making a change to a scheme or to a model. We allow you to have Git-like actions, which bring in those sorts of branches. And what I've observed, and I think what a lot of engineers that I've spoken with have voiced, is they understand how branches work, but they're not really necessarily looking to learn or adopt Git. It becomes a not a barrier, but it's definitely something that they have to contest with. So since they understand what those actions are like, we give the ability to have Git-like interactions, but you're not using Git directly. You still can use Git, but out of the box, we're able to give those actions to you. Another big benefit that we have in there towards automation is the ability to do those CI checks directly within our platform. So that's going to allow you to have that data integrity, to introduce those custom business logic validation rules that you may have in there while you're delivering whatever it is that your team delivers. So you can be traditional enterprise, and this right here is just a bit of a truncated list of what you might be delivering as a service catalog item, as just general day-to-day operations. But the goal here is to have one platform where your schema can exist, where it can naturally integrate into automation pipelines to make it easier for your teams to do their jobs. Now, that is a very, very quick high-level overview. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Otto now to go into Netpicker, and we'll keep the webinar going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. I will be doing a live demo soon, but for those who don't know what Netpicker is, I think a quick introduction is probably useful. And from your story, Jordan, I heard a lot of things that we have in common. For example, the Git-based workflow, and also the developer, giving power to the developer, and the freedom that comes with a platform like Infrahub is very much the same philosophy we use to design Netpicker. So essentially, that's a platform, which means that we provide the tools for you as a network engineer to do your job, to test the design, security, compliance. And we provide also out of the box some libraries with some compliance rules, for example, based on the CIS hardening guidelines. But for the rest, it's up to you as a network engineer and up to you as a team. Because we provide the platform, but you have to write those tests, which can be Python-based or like we call UI-based. So you don't have to know any Python, but if you're moving towards like more complex business cases, then you usually want to build in some logic in a programming language. So we chose Python for that, but it's up to you as an engineer. So our platform provides configuration backup, show command backup, or actually any command backup, And we connect to your network devices using SSH. So any device or server or even like Linux machines can be accessed using SSH and can be backed up or tested against. And we use a lot of open source libraries under the hood. So the most famous one is Netmico, which is a project by Kirk Bayer, sits on GitHub. And that enables us to support 117 vendors out of the box without needing to write specific vendor modules other than just configuring your device. And we are very proud to have a modern architecture, so completely Docker-based. All our containers can run on one system, completely offline, so no SaaS, no cloud. If you don't want that, of course, since they are just containers, you can move them around. You can even host them on your own private Azure or AWS environment. And everything's API first. So that means that every action you do in the front end as a user is, in a sense, an API call, which can be automated. So I think this is really good to mention for the people who like to tie things together, like we. Because we are using APIs heavily, both when connecting from Netpicker to Infrahub and also the other way around. That's it for this slide. I think, shall I take over the screen, Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So I need to tell a little bit on how Netpicker fits in our reference architecture. So Netpicker is a product from a company called NetEase, which is based in the Netherlands. We also make a product called Slurpit. Probably some of you know that as well, which is targeting device discovery. So Slurpit can find your device in your network, in your brownfield network, or you can set it up for active monitoring. And Netpicker is the testing platform. But I think it's good to mention that we don't aim to be an all-in-one solution, because we don't want to become a network source of truth. So we're always looking to collaborate with applications like Infrahub that can provide the one source of truth. And then, based on the data in the source of truth, we can either validate design rules, we can check for security issues, and we provide the layer to connect to your network and to to close the loop in terms of discovery. And then this is something we're gonna announce later this year, but we are moving towards the automation space as well, where if you of course find critical issues in your network in terms of security, for example, you probably also know how to fix them. So we are trying to move into that space as well, but that's coming later this year. Having that said, let's move on to the first use case that I want to show you. So here we are comparing the source of truth. So in this case, the data in Infrahub with the production state of the machines. And we start that use case from the perspective of Netpicker. So I've set up on our demo environment, I've set up one Cisco device, which is using our Mockit project, which is like an SSH emulator. And that means that I can quickly, you see, I selected the iOS as a platform here, and I can quickly run any command, like show a version against it. So it's just emulating a real device. So it's not a physical device or something like in EVE-NG. But for this demo purposes, it's working great. And the first use case I want to do is to compare the interfaces, which are configured here on this device. As you can see here, there's a couple of interfaces. And I'm picking this first Ethernet 00 for this demo, which is also the same interface that I configured in Infrahub. So if I go here to my device, so here's my Cisco iOS device. If I look at the interfaces, I see that's just dummy data. So forgive me, I'm not a network engineer. With the same name that's being configured. So I consider this state in Infrahub as my source of truth. So I want to, from Netpicker, I want to compare if actually this state is in line with my source of truth. So of course, you can do that in various ways. So this is the first use case that I'm going to show is how to do that from Netpicker. And then the second use case will look at the other way, like from Infrahub, from their CI/CD pipeline. I've written a custom Python script, which connects to Infrahub using their Python SDK, which is amazing, by the way. You should check it out on GitHub if you haven't. And I've written this test in our Python rule so that I can easily connect to Infrahub using an API key and then comparing the actual state. So now for those who don't know any Python, this might look a bit intimidating, but in essence, it's pretty straightforward. So I've set up first some technical settings to connect to the Infrahub client. And then I'm looking if there are any interfaces, any devices and interfaces configured. And the way a Netpicker test works is that it either takes in the device configuration that you might have backed up already, or backed up show commands. But in this case, we're not going to use any of those. So we're going to use a live CLI command, show interfaces, which is configured here on line 25. And for that to work, I need to select my device here on the list. So I'm using the debug mode now. That means that I'm going to run this test and can see the live result. But of course, in a production setup, you would schedule these kind of tests and then have them run periodically, like every day or every hour, so that you have an up-to-date information always. But for actually writing a test, this screen is my favorite screen for in Netpicker for writing. So if I click debug here, then it's going to run this script. So it's going to connect to Infrahub. It's going to look at this device, and it's going to compare the interface state. Well, let me make this a little bit bigger. So you see here the output that you already saw before. So I'm focusing this webinar on Ethernet 0.0. Its status is up. And if I scroll a little bit down, I see that the same interface is present in Infrahub. And if I look at my code, I'm going to compare the status here. So of course, the outcome of this test is now compliant because it's exactly the same. But how does it look if the status is not the same? So in order to show that, I'm going to edit this interface in Infrahub. And I disable this interface by clicking this checkbox. So let me save that. So that's been updated. If I now rerun this test, it should fail. So now it's again running the show interfaces command. So that output is exactly the same. But have a look now at here as my in my debug output. It says that there's a status mismatch for Ethernet 0.0. So this is the interface name, because the status in Infrahub is disabled, and while the response I get back from the RCLI command is enabled. So this is a way that you could see like if my test is failing or passing. So if I save this and then run it, I've selected it here. I click run rules. So this is normally what you schedule, this running part. And then I give it a couple of seconds. Refresh the results. Yeah, you see here. So now this rule for this device is failing because of this status mismatch. And you can see a little bit of our reporting in action here. Of course, we made this for enterprise purposes. So like hundreds of rules, hundreds of devices. So then you get huge lists. But you can see here that it's that for this use case, it's working. And this could be just one of the rules you write for connecting Infrahub and Netpicker together. So of course you can, yeah, since the schema is flexible, you can have any business critical data in here, and then compare that against the live device states. So this is the first use case I want to show. I'm not sure if there are any questions already.
Yeah, we do have one question that came in asking if Netpicker will do GNMI-based device interactions later on.
To be honest, I'm not even aware of those things, so I'm afraid I can't answer that really. If these are API-based systems, which you can access using a Python SDK, the answer is yes. We've done so, for example, for Aruba, Aruba Central. We've done integrations with applications like Infoblox. And this is highlighting a little bit of the flexibility you have as you have the full Python libraries available. So you're not limited to just SSH and those kind of things. You can, if you can access it with a Python library or even just with raw HTTP or any other protocol, you can probably test it with Netpicker.
So as long as that platform can speak an API of some sort, you should be able to.
You should be able to. And yeah, it usually takes a little bit of figuring out yourself. This is what I meant with, indeed, like it's a platform. We provide a lot of things out of the box. So as you can see on our website, we have so we can test against backups, show commands, APIs, or any controller-based systems, or even like database integrations. We've seen that as well. So yeah, if you have a Python library available for to connect to your favorite database, yeah, go ahead. It should work. But yeah, it's up to you. So I think then moving on to the second use case, which is this one, the integration of a Netpicker test in the Infrahub CI/CD pipeline. And this is what I love about your product, by the way, Jordan. So I've set up, and this maybe takes a little bit of introduction before actually showing the pipeline. There's something called a repository section here in Infrahub, which you can in which you can add your own public or private Git repository. So I've set up here our public Netpicker Infrahub repository, which I have open here. It's in my dev. Let me also show it. So I've made a small repository here with a YAML file, which is like, if you're familiar with GitLab or GitHub, which is kind of they use a similar system. It's a pipeline. It describes how what your pipeline should do. So we've set up a couple of checks and queries here. So I know a little bit what this is, but maybe you want to tell a little bit, Jordan, about how this is working in Infrahub. That's maybe nice to tell to the audience.
Yeah, I'll let you go ahead and keep going on with your demo.
Yeah,
and then
if I'm saying there's something
that
that's not correct, then please correct me. Sure. Because like this repository can sync quite a number of things. So the first thing is queries, which are GraphQL queries, and you can view them here. And essentially, these are just ways to get information out of your database. So it's very flexible. It uses GraphQL. So like I said, the flexible schema is really helpful to get data out of. So this is an example of my query. So I'm getting all device details here. So I'm starting with the infra device and then moving through the nodes, edges, and interfaces. So this is the way how to construct such a query. So that's in my repository. And the second thing that's in my repository is a so-called check, which is essentially just a Python script like we use in Netpicker. But it has the advantage that it can take in the data that's the output of this query. So that's what I'm also using in my test. So here for our Netpicker device check, I'm using the query with the device interface details, which are defined here. So here's again the GraphQL query that you saw in Infrahub. And then my check is essentially, yeah, like I said, just a Python script, just an extension of the Infrahub check class, where you define the query here, and then this data is then available, which is the output of this query. So I'm not going through all this code, because this is quite a bit. You can find it on our GitHub. It's public. But essentially, what this enables us to do is when I create a proposed change, which is like, if you're familiar with Git, it's like a pull request or a merge request in GitLab. It is a way to get the changes in my my own branch, Webinar Otto, into the main branch. So that's what you see here. If I open this proposed change, you see there's a source branch, there's a destination branch, and I can either approve it, merge it, or close comments. Very familiar if you're, at least for me as a developer, this is the way, yeah, you write code, you collaborate with colleagues, and I'm very happy to see this coming to the network automation world as well. Because it has a lot of advantages. So one of the cool things that you can do with Infrahub is then define user, what's it called again? User checks or user-defined checks? Yeah, user-defined checks. So these are, like I said, the Python scripts that you can have in your own repository, and these will run as part of this pipeline. And what's cool about that they are running as part of the pipeline is that you can have access to the production state with Netpicker, and also to the proposed new source of truth, which is in my webinar branch. So I've written this custom check, which you can expand. You can see the logging here, where I'm comparing, again, simple example, but good enough for this webinar to get the idea. So I'm looking up my Cisco iOS device in Netpicker. I'm looking up the interface, and then I'm running a custom test, and the output is a bit garbled here. So yeah, sorry for that, but you see that outcome is success. So what I'm doing is in this test is again checking if the proposed change, which is an interface name, is actually present on the device itself. So again, like well, you could see it as like a production validation, but this time from the perspective of Infrahub and as part of a pipeline. So of course you can in your custom checks you can either let them fail or return errors, and you will see those errors then in this pipeline. So this circle will turn red and it will give you an error state. So very useful to, for example, if you have design validations, for example, that your interface names should have a certain format, you can have a custom Netpicker test written for that, call that test from this pipeline, and have like instant validation of your design rules, also for proposed changes. So not only for your actual state, but also for, like, I would call it like future state or proposed state. So yeah, very cool. It's also very technical, I realize that. So yeah, if you're not so familiar with Python, you can define also something else in Netpicker, which are the simple rules, by adding rule here and setting the type to simple rule. So let me give you a quick demo of that. Might be interesting for the people who would like to use that. So we provide 3 severity levels, which you can use to prioritize the outcomes. So for example, if I set this to high, and then edit the properties of the rule, you see here there's no code editor anymore. I just select what kind of type of test I want to do, like either test against config backup, test against command backup, in case I can enter any show command or any command actually, or I can run a real-time command. And this is useful because real-time commands are executed while running the test. So command backups are done when doing the configuration backup. So in that run, we're also backing up commands that are not so time sensitive. For example, show version. And then you can just do simple regex or even just normal text comparisons. But the cool part about this is that if I update this text here, I can click this show code checkbox, and then you will see that it's actually updating the Python code underneath. So if I want to do like a config backup, see while I'm typing here, it will update my Python code. So it's also a very good way to get started with Python if you're not familiar with that as an engineer, because Netpicker will do a lot of work for you. And you can, if you need to make extra changes here, you can just write in this editor. And yeah, pretty cool, I think, for learning Python and becoming more net DevOps. All right, going back to use cases. So I've showed 2 use cases, one from the perspective of Netpicker, calling Infrahub, and one of the other way around, integrating Netpicker as a test in the CI/CD pipeline. So I hope it's been helpful, and hope my examples made clear what you can do. I think the integration between these systems is pretty straightforward. It's just using HTTP APIs. If you're a little bit familiar with that, you can get it up and running pretty quickly.
That's really interesting, Otto. I really like how you can do the those simple examples, and they bring out the you can expose the Python code to help learn how to expand that, or just generally how it works under the hood.
Yeah, we noticed that a lot of tools, they go either one way or like the full. There's a lot of people who are experimenting with Python for network automation, for example, using Nor, Near, those kind of libraries, and those work great. Don't get me wrong, but they are not so friendly to get started with if you're just have a brownfield network that you want to do some like CVE checks, for example. Then you need a little bit more of a user-friendly interface, which you can share with your colleagues and you can work together. Like I said, we in the background, this is all these rules that I've written here are just stored in our internal Git repository, which you can share with your colleagues and so. So there's no reason anymore to just go out on your own and write your own scripts and be the only one who knows how to automate your network. So we try to make it as enterprise friendly as possible, if you could call it like that.
Oh,
all right,
that's very nice.
Any other questions?
Let's see here. We haven't had any others come through chat. No, that one was dismissed. Okay, I think if you can go ahead and maybe, unless you have anything else to show us, since you still have control of the screen, maybe just bring that last slide up for me, or I can take it back over.
Yeah, there was one thing that we didn't cover yet, which was like this artifact definition. I know this can be used to generate, for example, new configurations for devices. And these can also, by the way, be input for Netpicker tests. So maybe this is for the future webinar, very nice to dive into. It's like advanced level, network automation, I would say.
Yeah, the generators that we have in there, and I know we don't really have any slide deck prepared for this, so we can maybe just talk about it generally a little bit there. So when you're using Infrahub and you have this as your source of truth, where you have different repositories of information all coming together, which is it's kind of that not mothership, but like that Valhalla. That's the goal, right? Is to have all your information in one place, and the generators can allow you to bring more complex configurations together, where it's not just a config for a single switch, or it can be a configuration for an entire leaf spine setup. Or if your end goal, one of the use cases I mentioned on my slides was generating like a data center or a POP. So that's not going to be even just, let's say, leaf spine. You may have your IPAM data in there. You can have rack elevation in there, like your cabling, and it starts to get into a much more comprehensive generation of these configurations that brings those multiple sources together. And you're right, it is a more complex topic and probably deserves a webinar on its own. But the idea, the concept that you can generate configs that are wider for whatever it is that you deliver as a service, as your as your, not your application, but whatever your team delivers. So I appreciate you highlighting that.
Yeah, I was looking to integrate it in this webinar, but maybe it's a step too far. So I think it's
we'll make that the next one.
Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah. Then before we end, I would like to highlight one more thing. Since everybody's of course busy with AI nowadays, we could not how do you say not do it. So what we did is we talked a little bit about the step towards more like development programming with Python. So we created our own custom ChatGPT prompt, which we called the Netpicker test creator, and you can find the link on the website here. And this really helps if you want to get started with Python, but you're not very familiar what to do with it. So it goes this. For example, this custom GPT knows all about Netpicker rules. So it knows the format, it knows what it can do with it. So you can ask it a question like, how do I check that all my interfaces have an IPv4 address? And it will actually write the test for you. So we've been testing out this a lot and getting a lot of feedback from our customers as well. Like this gets you 90% there. So it already pre-fills in the correct show commands if you don't know them. It picks the right platform, and then it writes actually the assertion for you, including nice documented. So I really highlight this feature. I think anything that can help you as a developer, you should embrace it. And this has been a great help to get some starting rules if you're starting with Netpicker, or even if you want to integrate with Infrahub, you just let me actually try that out. That's pretty cool. Can I just do a new one? Yeah, new chat. I'm not sure if it already picked up your GitHub repositories about so let's see what it comes up with. Oh, it's searching the web. Yeah, it's pretty smart.
There we go.
Yeah. This all right. Check. How do you call it? That validates the they should have only. I'm just making up some dummy questions here for the
Sure.
for the webinar, but I'm just curious if it actually knows. Yeah, this is using a Netpicker check, but I was hoping it would actually use your library to connect.
Yeah.
Maybe the audience
nice.
should check this out themselves. Yeah. All right.
That's
Yeah,
that's a really neat way to go about that. We've been internally working on some AI tooling that can help generate some schemas, because that can be a little bit of an administrative lift if you're unfamiliar with it. I don't know exactly when we're going to make that a little bit more public, but we should have some fun AI stuff coming out as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, especially all this the boring stuff you want to automate as much as possible, and indeed thinking about business logic, thinking about custom checks, what really takes like your mind to get started working that you would do yourself. Yeah. All right.
Very nice.
Any other questions?
Well, no, it doesn't look like any other questions have come in.
All right. How can people contact you best if they have more questions about this webinar or? they have some
Well,
suggestions.
For us, I mean, we can go to either opsmill.com, which is our corporate website, or get to the actual GitHub repo where you can download and run your own copy of Infrahub.
Cool. And do you have something like a
And then
Slack channel, or that?
Yes, we do have our Slacks linked off of both of those, as well as our documentation that you'd be able to get into and learn a bit more.
Cool. Yeah. Well, same for us. Our website is the main way to either download or to put in a support ticket if you have any issues running, or we're happy to help. Even if you're not a paying customer, we're still trying to give you the best support as possible. And we're also on Slack if you are open for a more like chatty.
Yeah, and actually, I just corrected. I'm sorry, Discord, not Slack. I have a
Discord.
tendency to conflate the two. But yes, we have our Discord server and multiple help and information channels inside of there.
Cool.
Okay, great. So I think with that, we can wrap up for today. Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll send out a follow-up just with a link to the recording. And when we get that all put together, some of this will be auto-generated from the Zoom webinar platform, but we'll also be publishing a version of this out so that it's more generally accessible and you can share it out with others who might not have been able to even register, let alone attend. So look forward to that. Thanks very much, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day. And thanks, Otto, and thanks, Jordan, for your time and presentation today. Oh wait, looks like.
Thanks for having us.
Oh yeah, got it. Okay, great.
All right.
Good day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.